Alright, the first book I finished in the month of August, yes, was 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This book I'm honestly not even gonna bother doing like a summary because so much happens, but also like not a lot happens. It's really hard to explain. Yeah, this is just one of those where you just gotta like go into it. But I do not have a rating. I do have it physically, but I only listen to the audiobook. And yes, this book is challenging and complex, but I think ultimately it's just like super weird. So I don't know if I will ever reread this book, but as it is right now, I probably won't. Yeah, like if people wanted a video and enough people were like, make a video about it, make a video, I would reread it, but until that happens, I'm probably not going to. The next book I finished was Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This is just a contemporary romance about two people, Percy and Sam, when they fall in love when they're younger, and then also how they interact and what has happened when they're older, and it just goes from past to present. I gave this book 2 stars and I did make a video about it. The last video I posted was about this book, and ultimately it just came down to a bad main character or just like an annoying one. So yeah. The next book was No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. I gave this book 2 stars and I made a video about it. I talked about Carl Jung and all his theories and things, most specifically about the shadow and how I feel like this book is a prime example of what happens if you ignore your shadow. And check it out if you want to know more. But yeah, give this book 2 stars. The next book I read was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. This book is just a coming of age story about our young main character Pip, who is an orphan and is now under the care of his older sister and her husband. The story is just about what happens when you have ideas for the future and your future specifically, but you are, I guess, unrealistic in those expectations, or you believe some things to be one way or another when they're actually not. I don't have a rating for this because I did just listen to it on audiobook. I have the library copy because I was gonna read it, but then I was like, there are a lot of books I'm trying to read and it's a bigger one and I got the gist of the story, so I'm not really interested in rereading it, but I am interested in reading more Charles Dickens. This is my first Dickens I've read. What made me want to read more Charles Dickens was he has a short story called The Signal Man, and I love it. It is so good, so I want to read more of his short stories and just more of his writing in general. And yeah, we are kind of in our Dickensian era apparently, so that kind of sucks. The next book I read was Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I'm sorry, I tried to look up like the pronunciation, how to do it, but for whatever reason my brain is just like, nope, that Russian man's name you are not gonna be able to say. But I know who he is. Like, obviously he's like a freaking icon. I just, for whatever reason, can't say his last name. For those of you who don't know, it is about a man who kills I believe his landlord or some woman who he owes money, and her sister in cold blood, and how he kind of loses his mind and descends into madness after it. I didn't give it a rating because it was only on audiobook, but I'm gonna be buying a copy whenever I do and rereading it and then making a video about it, so I'm excited for that. This is low-key a spoiler, but before I'd read it, I watched like one of those TED Ed videos that's like, oh, this is why you should read Crime and Punishment, all this stuff. And I'm pretty sure it was the TED Ed one. They talk about how like he turns himself in and like the state of like Russian prisons during that time. But I was reading it and the whole time I was like, is he gonna turn himself in? Like, what are we doing? But no, he didn't, for whatever reason, so it's whatever. The next book I read, and it is one of my favorite books of all time, Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Carol Rivka Brunt. This book is about our main character Jude, whose beloved uncle had recently passed away from AIDS. The story is just about how her family is like coming to grips with like his death, and his boyfriend or long-term partner is still alive, but because of like the misinformation around AIDS and how it spread and all these things during the time that this book takes place, he's really ostracized by June and her family. The story is just about what unfolds after his death and when June finds out that that's his boyfriend, and then them interacting more and just what comes out of it. This book has 5 stars from me, and I wouldn't recommend this to a whole lot of people. I don't know who to recommend this to. I guess if you like literary fiction, one of my favorite genres is literary fiction. So if you like literary fiction and kind of like slower stories where kind of nothing happens, but there's a lot of like character interaction and like relationship growth, read Tell the Wolves I'm Home. And yeah, it's sad. This is not a happy book. This is not a good time, but it's a good read and I love it. Just the title alone, Tell the Wolves I'm Home, like come on. Yeah, and I think ultimately with this book, I was gonna make a video about it, but I like was having such a hard time like putting into words why I care about this book. The biggest thing I was like questioning and sitting on after I finished the book was why it's in June's perspective. She's just a 13-year-old, and the niece of obviously the more like interesting character who died literally, as Rebecca Mackey on the back of this says, Tell the Wolves I'm Home is a tale as charming and as magnetic as the missing character at its heart, which is her Uncle Finn, and he's this amazing artist and all these things that you can learn if you read it. The true main character, like the star of the show, is her Uncle Finn, but he died from AIDS. So I think this is more of a story that shows the not only like the tragedy when it comes to marginalized people and communities going through like a health crisis, you know, and a epidemic that's killing so many people that are part of a certain community, but also that just seeing from the not gay, just like a younger perspective of how adults act around AIDS and how they're scared too and they don't know the harm and danger of misinformation. It ultimately always will fall, and the brunt of it will be on whatever marginalized community is already going through an epidemic or something along those lines, right? I just love this book. It's really hard. It's really hard to put in words. And yeah, this is how I think this is the best way I can do it and make it short and sweet. One of my coworkers, when I worked at a bookstore, I was reading this at the time, and they read this whatever this is called, and all they had to say was, she's not like other girls. And no, she's not. So yeah, if you like literary fiction, check out Tell the Wolves I'm Home. If you don't, I would not recommend this. You probably won't like it. Next. The next book I read was Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat by Samin Nosrat. This is just a book talking about like the basics of cooking and stuff. I'm trying to learn more about it, trying to become, you know, a more competent adult and all those things, and just a better cook in general. So I just picked it up. It was nice, easy, short read. I'm definitely gonna have to reread it, but I really liked it. And yeah, since it was more like informational, educational, I didn't rate it, but I did read it, so that counts. The next book I read was City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. Another one without a rating. I've read this book I think maybe 2 times before, but because of its like debut-ness, you know, no shade, I just had to know what is the foundation of the story, because I'm finally going to be reading like The Mortal Instruments, and I'm excited to. If it wasn't for how like popular these books were and like how like revered Cassandra Clare is, I wouldn't bother, but I'm pushing through. I want it to get good. I'm waiting for it to get good, and I'm excited to get to Clockwork Angel. Is that what it is? Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, Clockwork Princess. That's what like everybody freaks out about. So yeah, I'm excited to keep going with the series. The next book I finished in the month of August was The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Oh my goodness, this freaking brick of a book. Oh my gosh. I'm not gonna do a summary because I think this is just one of those that you should just go into, because yeah, Brandon Sanderson does a great job of just dropping you into the story and then you kind of just go along. I gave this book 4.5 stars, and the only reason it was not a 5 was obviously it has a very long length for 1,252 pages. Despite its length, it doesn't feel super long when you're reading, but there were points where I was like, why is this in here? This does not need to be in here. This book is long enough. Let's keep it pushing. All right, Brandon, please. But still, even still, this book is amazing. And yes, I will be making a video about The Way of Kings very soon. The next 3 books I read were all audiobooks. The first one was You Again by Kate Goldbeck. I gave it 3.5. It's just, you know, a cute little romance. I don't understand the hype with Raylo. Apparently this is one of the Raylo, like, writers where they based the, like, main character off of Raylo, and it's like a whole community. I'm just like, I honestly genuinely do not get it. But it's like good books are coming out of it. Like, yeah, I'm not judging. I'm just letting people do what they want. But I just don't understand. I understand that adults can be insecure. Adults have insecurities. I'm more than aware of that. But it is kind of tiring to read sometimes. Like, yes, everyone goes through things and all these things, but like, when it's fiction, I'm like, make them the opposite of insecure, right? Like, give them like no inhibitions. Like, this is not real. But it's a contemporary romance, so I get it. And yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. I'm not saying it was a bad book, but it was just like, I guess I've read so many books recently where like the main female character specifically, even though the male character in this one was a little insecure, but they just have this really bad insecurity as adults, and it's like, you gotta work on that, okay? The next 2 audiobooks I listened to / read were Obsidian and Onyx by Jennifer L. Armentrout. These books Obsidian I read like maybe when I was like 14 or something, and I had to stop because the main guy is so hot and cold, like it made me angry, so I had to stop reading. But after You Again, they had, yeah, it has really good banter, and I'm like, I want that similar kind of energy. And I was like, oh my gosh, Obsidian, they go back and forth a bit, so I was like, let me read it, let me pick it up. I gave Obsidian 3 stars. I think I gave Onyx a 2.5 or 2.75. I do not remember, and it's not on my notes. For Obsidian, the main guy's name is Demon Black. I listened to the audiobook, and his name is Demon. I'm like, you could have made it Demon Black, really? That's the best thing you can come up with? And everybody else has normal names. And like, yeah, nobody freaks out about his name. It's like, that kid's name is Demon. That kid's name is a Demon. I'm not gonna talk to him. I'm not gonna interact with him. You crazy? Anyway, Demon calls the main character Katie Kitten, and it's obviously like with the cringe like Discord kitten jokes and stuff, it's like hard to read. He starts calling her that way too fast. Like, he says, she introduces herself and then he like starts calling her kitten, and it's like, come on now, that's not how nicknames work. You gotta kind of like get to know the person first, but it's whatever. With Onyx, it definitely lost the steam that the first one had. I think with like the initial character interactions, it was really nice, but they kind of just fall to the wayside for sake of the plot and to keep the plot pushing. Yeah, there's some like questionable character decisions, character deaths that I felt were just unnecessary, especially for like a young adult book. I am going to finish the series just because I feel like it and I want to, and they're easy reads, they're easy to read, and they're entertaining enough, but I do feel like with every book, it's just gonna get a little worse and worse and a little more boring. That's what I think is gonna happen. The next book I read was The Secret History. The next book I read was The Secret History by Miss Donna Tartt. Obviously, I've lost some enthusiasm. But I gave this book 2 stars. I'm going to be making a video about it, but As the back says, the summary of the secret history is, under the influence of their charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at an elite New England college discover a way of thinking and living that is a world away from the humdrum existence of their contemporaries. But when they go beyond the boundaries of normal morality, they slip gradually from obsession to corruption and betrayal, and at last inexorably into evil. And I don't think that's what happened. I feel like that blurb on the back is a lie. Okay, I'm not gonna get too much into it because I will be making a video about it, but I gave this book 2 freaking stars. Keep an eye out, because yeah, the next video that's gonna be coming out is gonna be this one, so keep an eye out. The last book I finished in the month of August was The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. I gave this book 2.5 stars. It is about Beatriz, whose father was murdered after some like insurgency stuff with the government and all that, and her and her mom are living in poverty, and to get out, she wants to find a solution. So she marries this man who is the owner of, or the patron of the hacienda, but it is not what it seems. There seems to be an evil spirit lurking throughout the house that is after Beatriz. For me, there was not nearly enough scary house stuff in here, especially when it's advertised as like a, you know, like a haunted house story. I thought it was going to be a little more like cool and of that stuff, but I would say it's more of just like a historical with some like spooky ghosty magic stuff behind it. And that's pretty much the biggest reason why it got a 2.5. It didn't get a 2.75 from me. It didn't get a higher rating just because what I was expecting was not what was delivered. The prose wasn't my favorite, the writing wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't terrible. It could have been worse, but it could have been better. Like the title says, I didn't only read books, I read some manga as well. So for the physical manga I read volume 5, 6, and 7 of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. I love Toilet Bound Hanako-kun so much. It is one of my favorite anime, one of my favorite manga. I'm reading it because I just want to get caught up with the story. There are a few of the manga I own that I haven't read. I have read all these before, but I want to get to the ones I haven't. And obviously the story is still going, so I want to get the most recent volumes that have come out. I really want a tattoo from Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, but I just don't know what exactly yet. So part of the reason I'm reading it the way I am is because I'm trying to look and find a good panel. And then the other manga and the last book / manga of this video is One Punch Man Volume 4. One Punch Man is another one of my favorite anime, one of my favorite manga, and yeah, similar to Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, I want a tattoo. One of my favorite characters of all time, one of my favorite anime characters of all time is in One Punch Man. I'm not gonna say who, but they are in there, and I want to find a good panel for them to get a tattoo of. So yeah, that was my August wrap up. How was your August? Are you excited to be going into September? I am personally. I think I know September is going to be a great month. If you want to see more of me and hear how good of a singer I am, you can check out my music channel and original music all under the name of Shy Fighter. Like, if you want to subscribe if you want to subscribe. I don't know. Do whatever you would like to do. And I will see you when I see you. Farewell.